history of China, many powerful figures shaped the course of its destiny. But among them, a select group of women defied the norms of their time, leaving legacies that echo through the centuries. Their stories have been passed down, inspiring generations, yet often overshadowed by the men of their age.
Today, we embark on a journey to uncover the incredible lives of these women. From fierce warriors to brilliant strategists, from scholarly pioneers to fearless leaders, these are the women who not only shaped China's past but also changed the world in ways we are still discovering.
In this special compilation, we bring together the stories of 10 extraordinary women who left their mark on history. From the legendary Mulan to the powerful Wu Zetian and many more.
Their legacies are more than just history. They are lessons of strength, intelligence, and resilience. These women not only helped to build the foundation of an empire, but also paved the way for future generations.
Let's begin our journey through time, starting with one of the most revered women in Chinese history. Hey Amanda, quick question. What's the most important piece of clothing you own?
Probably my favorite cotton scarf. It's lightweight, breathable, and perfect for any season. Why do you ask?
Well, did you know that you owe your beloved scarf to a 13th century Chinese woman named Wang Zhaojun?
Wait, what? A 13th century woman invented cotton clothing?
Not exactly, but she revolutionized the way cotton was produced, making it accessible to millions of people. She's basically the reason cotton became the fabric of ancient China.
Wang Zhaojun. She's one of my favorite figures in Chinese history. Let's dive into her story.
So, Wang Zhaojun was born in the late 13th century in what's now Shanghai. She grew up in a poor farming family, and life wasn't easy.
That's right. She faced a lot of challenges early on, including an unhappy marriage. Eventually, she fled to Hainan Island, which was a major hub for textile innovation at the time.
Hainan? The tropical paradise? What was she doing there?
Well, Hainan was home to the Li people, who had some of the most advanced weaving techniques in the world. Wang Zhaojun learned everything she could from them and brought that knowledge back to the mainland.
So she was like a textile spy, stealing trade secrets?
Not exactly. She was more of a student who became a master. She took what she learned and improved upon it, creating innovations that would change the textile industry forever.
But why Hainan? Wasn't it like the middle of nowhere back then?
Actually, Hainan was a cultural melting pot. The Li people had been weaving cotton for over 3,000 years. Their techniques, like the Li brocade, were incredibly intricate and colorful. Wang Zhaojun saw an opportunity to learn and bring that knowledge back to improve life for her people.
Wait, 3,000 years? That's older than most civilizations.
Exactly. The Li people were masters of their craft. Their brocade designs often featured geometric patterns and symbolic motifs, representing their culture and beliefs. Wang Zhaojun saw the potential in their techniques and adapted them for wider use.
Okay, so what did she actually invent? Was it like a fancy sewing machine or something?
Clothes. She improved the spinning wheel by making it foot-powered instead of hand-powered. This might not sound like a big deal, but it tripled the speed of spinning cotton into thread.
Whoa, that's a game changer. Can you explain how it worked? I'm having trouble picturing it.
Sure. Traditional spinning wheels were hand-cranked, which was slow and labor-intensive. Wang Zhaojun's design used a pedal system, freeing up the weaver's hands and making the process much faster. It was like upgrading from dial-up internet to broadband.
I love that analogy. But how did she come up with the idea?
It's believed she combined elements of existing tools she saw in Hainan with her own ingenuity. She was a true innovator, always looking for ways to improve efficiency.
What else did she do?
She also introduced new weaving techniques, like the Li brocade, which was way more durable and colorful than anything people had seen before. Oh, and she popularized cotton farming in the Yangtze River Delta, which became the textile hub of China.
So she basically turned cotton into the fabric of the Yuan dynasty?
Exactly. Before her, most people wore rough hemp or expensive silk. Cotton was the perfect middle ground, comfortable, affordable, and durable.
But how did she convince people to switch to cotton?
Great question. She didn't just invent new tools, she taught others how to use them. She traveled around, sharing her knowledge and training local weavers. It was like a 13th century version of a tech startup.
Wait, so she was like a traveling textile teacher? That's pretty cool.
Exactly. She was both an inventor and an educator. Her work didn't just improve technology, it empowered communities, especially women, by giving them new skills and economic opportunities.
So she was basically a feminist icon too?
In a way, yes. She challenged the norms of her time by becoming a leader in a male-dominated field and by uplifting other women through her work.
Okay, but how big of an impact are we talking here? Did she just make comfy clothes, or was there more to it?
Oh, it was huge. Her innovations turned the Yangtze Delta into the textile capital of China, and her techniques spread across Asia. Some historians even say her work laid the groundwork for the global textile industry centuries later.
No way. So she's basically the OG fashion influencer?
Haha, you could say that. But seriously, her legacy is still celebrated today. There are temples dedicated to her, and she's considered a pioneer in Chinese technology.
That's amazing. But why don't more people know about her?
Well, history often overlooks the contributions of women, especially those from humble backgrounds. But Wang Zhaoju's story reminds us that innovation can come from the most unexpected places.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that one woman's ingenuity could have such a huge impact on the world.
Absolutely. And her story is a reminder that progress often starts with individuals who are willing to challenge the status quo and think outside the box.
You said there are temples dedicated to her. Why is she so revered?
In Chinese culture, Wang Zhaoju is seen as a symbol of innovation and perseverance. Temples in her honor celebrate her contributions to society. She's also considered a patron deity of weavers and textile workers.
So she's like a saint for weavers?
Exactly. People still pray to her for success in their craft. It's a testament to how deeply her work impacted Chinese society.
How does Wang Zhaoju stack up against other famous inventors in history?
She's right up there with figures like Johannes Gutenberg or James Watt. While they revolutionized printing and steam power, she transformed the textile industry. Her impact was just as profound, even if she's less well-known globally.
That's wild. She deserves way more recognition.
Absolutely. Her story is a reminder that innovation isn't limited to one time or place. It can come from anywhere.
Why should we care about Wang Zhaoju today?
Her story is a reminder that innovation often comes from unexpected places. She also highlights the importance of education and sharing knowledge. In a world where technology is constantly evolving, her legacy is more relevant than ever.
Yeah, she's proof that one person's ideas can change the world.
Exactly. And her focus on empowering others, especially women, is something we can all learn from.
So, Wang Zhaoju wasn't just a weaver. She was a revolutionary who changed the way people lived, dressed, and worked. Her story reminds us that innovation can come from the most unexpected places.
And that cotton t-shirt you're wearing? You can thank Wang Zhaoju for making it possible.
Next time, we're diving into the life of another incredible woman, Wang Zhaojun, the peacemaker princess who used marriage to stop a war. Trust me, you don't want to miss it.
A princess who stopped a war? Count me in. See you next time.
Hey Amanda, have you ever heard of a woman so beautiful that her marriage literally stopped a war?
Wait, are we talking about a fairy tale or real history?
Oh, this is 100% real history. Meet Wang Zhaojun, the Han Dynasty princess who used her beauty and brains to broker peace between China and the Xiongnu nomads.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Tell me more about this peacemaker princess.
So, Wang Zhaojun was born during the Han Dynasty, around 50 BCE. She was a commoner, but was selected to be a lady-in-waiting in the imperial palace.
A commoner in the palace? How did that happen?
Well, the emperor had a habit of recruiting beautiful women to serve in his court. But here's the twist. Wang Zhaojun refused to bribe a court painter. So he painted her, let's just say, less than flattering.
Ouch! So she got passed over by the emperor?
Exactly. But her luck changed when the Xiongnu, a powerful nomadic tribe, demanded a Han princess as part of a peace treaty. The emperor, not wanting to send his own daughter, chose Wang Zhaojun instead.
Wait, so she was basically sent off to marry a stranger in the middle of nowhere?
Pretty much. But here's where it gets interesting. When the emperor finally saw her in person before she left, he was like, "Wait, you're stunning. Why didn't anyone tell me?" But it was too late. She was already promised to the Xiongnu leader, Hanyi Chanyu.
That's gotta sting. So what happened next?
Wang Zhaojun made the best of it. She traveled thousands of miles to the Xiongnu lands, married Hanyi, and became a symbol of peace between the two cultures.
Did it actually work? I mean, did the peace last?
It did. Her marriage brought about 60 years of peace between the Han dynasty and the Xiongnu. She even had a son with Hanyi, who later became a key figure in maintaining the alliance.
Okay, but how is she remembered today? Is she just a footnote in history, or is there more to her story?
Oh, she's a legend. Wang Zhaojun is celebrated in Chinese poetry, art, and even operas. She's seen as a symbol of sacrifice and diplomacy, a woman who gave up her personal happiness for the greater good.
That's pretty powerful. But was she happy? I mean, she was basically sent off to a foreign land with no say in the matter.
That's the tragic part. While she's celebrated for her role in bringing peace, her personal life was likely lonely and difficult. But her story reminds us of the complex roles women played in history, often caught between duty and desire.
Are there any physical places where people can go to learn about her?
Yes, there are several memorial sites and cultural landmarks associated with her. For instance, the Zhaojun tomb in Hohhot, Inner Mongolia, is said to be her burial place. It's a popular tourist attraction and a symbol of her enduring legacy.
What's special about the tomb?
The tomb is surrounded by lush greenery and is often referred to as a green tomb because the grass there stays green longer than in the surrounding areas. It's a place where people can reflect on her life and contributions.
Is there any temples dedicated to her?
Well, Wang Zhaojun isn't worshipped in the same way as deities like Guan Yin or Mazu, but she's celebrated in Chinese culture as a symbol of peace and diplomacy. Her story is immortalized in poetry, art, and even operas.
So no actual temples?
Not exactly. While there may not be a specific temple solely for her, her legacy is honored in cultural sites and through symbolic representations. For example, her story is often depicted in murals, sculptures, and even in some historical sites related to the Han dynasty.
So how is she venerated if there aren't temples?
Wang Zhaojun is more of a cultural and literary icon than a religious figure. She's often depicted in traditional Chinese operas, poems, and paintings. Her story is taught in schools, and she's celebrated as a symbol of sacrifice and diplomacy.
That's fascinating. So her legacy lives on through art and education?
Exactly. She's a reminder of the power of cultural exchange and the role individuals can play in shaping history.
How does Wang Zhaojun stack up against other famous peacemakers in history?
She's right up there with figures like Eleanor of Aquitaine or Cleopatra. While they used diplomacy and marriage to secure peace, Wang Zhaojun's story is unique because of the cultural exchange she facilitated between the Han Chinese and the Xiongnu.
That's wild. She deserves way more recognition.
Absolutely. Her story is a reminder that peace isn't just about treaties. It's about people.
Why should we care about Wang Zhaojun today?
Her story is a reminder that peace often comes at a personal cost. She also highlights the importance of cultural exchange and diplomacy. In a world where conflict is still prevalent, her legacy is more relevant than ever.
Yeah, she's proof that one person's actions can change the course of history.
Exactly. And her focus on peace and understanding is something we can all learn from. So, Wang Zhaojun wasn't just a princess. She was a diplomat, a peacemaker, and a symbol of cultural exchange. Her story shows how one woman's courage can change the course of history.
And let's not forget, she's proof that beauty and brains can go hand in hand.
Next time, we're diving into the life of another incredible woman, Qin Liangyu, the Ming Dynasty's only officially recognized female general. Trust me, her story is even more epic.
A female general? I'm already hooked. See you next time.
Hey, Amanda, have you ever heard of a woman who led armies into battle and was officially recognized as a general by the emperor?
Wait, are you talking about Joan of Arc or someone else?
Nope. I'm talking about Qin Liangyu, the Ming Dynasty's only officially recognized female general. She wasn't just a warrior. She was a brilliant strategist and a national hero.
Okay, now you've got my attention. Tell me more about this warrior queen.
So, Qin Liangyu was born in 1574 during the Ming Dynasty. She came from a family of military leaders, and from a young age, she was trained in martial arts, archery, and military strategy.
Wait, a woman trained in martial arts in the 16th century? That's pretty unusual, right?
Absolutely. But her family believed in equality, and they saw her potential early on. She even married into another military family, which gave her even more opportunities to develop her skills.
So she was basically born into a military dynasty?
Exactly. But what's fascinating is that she didn't just inherit her position. She earned it through her incredible talent and leadership.
How did she go from being a military wife to an actual general?
Great question. When her husband died, she took over his position as the leader of their army. But here's the kicker. She didn't just maintain the status quo. She transformed the army into one of the most effective fighting forces in the region.
What made her such a great leader?
For starters, she was a brilliant strategist. She used innovative tactics, like guerrilla warfare and psychological operations, to outsmart her enemies. She also had a reputation for being fair and disciplined, which earned her the loyalty of her troops.
So she was basically the Ming Dynasty's version of Sun Tzu?
You could say that, but she was also a hands-on leader. She fought on the front lines alongside her soldiers, which was almost unheard of for someone of her status. One of the most fascinating aspects of Qin Liangyu's military career was her elite unit, known as the White Cavalry. Can you tell us more about them?
Absolutely. The White Cavalry was a highly disciplined and skilled force, known for their distinctive white uniforms and unmatched loyalty to Qin Liangyu. They were trained in both traditional combat and guerrilla tactics, making them a formidable force on the battlefield.
So they were like the Ming Dynasty Special Forces?
Exactly. And what's even more impressive is that Qin Liangyu personally trained and led them, earning their unwavering respect and devotion. So, what were some of her most famous battles?
One of her most notable campaigns was against the rebel leader Shi Chongming. She led her troops to victory in several key battles, effectively crushing the rebellion and restoring order to the region.
That's impressive. Did she ever lose a battle?
She did face setbacks, but she was known for her resilience. Even in defeat, she would regroup and come back stronger. Her ability to adapt and learn from her mistakes was one of her greatest strengths.
What about her relationship with the emperor? Did he recognize her achievements?
Absolutely. The Wanli emperor was so impressed by her that he officially recognized her as a general and even wrote poems in her honor. She was one of the few women in Chinese history to receive such recognition.
Did Qin Liangyu ever face external threats, like invasions from neighboring tribes?
Yes. One of her most significant challenges was defending the Ming Dynasty against the rising Manchu forces, who would later establish the Qing Dynasty. She led her troops in several key battles to protect the empire's borders.
How did she fare against them?
While the Ming Dynasty ultimately fell to the Manchus, Qin Liangyu's efforts delayed their advance and demonstrated her strategic brilliance. She was one of the last defenders of the Ming, fighting tirelessly until the very end.
What about her personal life? Did she have a family?
She did. She married Ma Qiancheng, a military commander, and they had several children. After her husband's death, she took over his role, but she also made sure to raise her children with the same values of discipline and loyalty.
So she was balancing motherhood and military leadership?
Exactly. She was a true multitasker, proving that women could excel in both family life and public service.
How is Qin Liangyu remembered in Chinese culture today?
She's celebrated in countless poems, operas, and paintings. One of the most famous depictions of her is in the 24 Histories, where she's praised for her bravery and leadership. There are also statues and memorials dedicated to her across China.
So she's not just a historical figure, she's a cultural icon?
Exactly. Her story has inspired generations of Chinese people. especially women, to strive for greatness.
Why should we care about Qin Liangyu today?
Her story is a testament to the power of leadership, resilience, and breaking barriers. In a world where women are still fighting for equality, Qin Liangyu's legacy is more relevant than ever.
Yeah, she's proof that women can excel in any field, even those traditionally dominated by men.
Exactly. And her focus on fairness and discipline is something we can all learn from, whether we're leading armies or just trying to navigate everyday life. So, Qin Liangyu wasn't just a general. She was a trailblazer who defied expectations and changed the course of history. Her story reminds us that true leadership knows no gender.
And let's not forget, she's proof that women can be just as fierce and strategic as any man.
Next time, we're diving into the life of another incredible woman, Ban Zhao, the Han Dynasty's pioneering scholar and historian. Trust me, her story is just as inspiring.
A scholar and historian? I'm already hooked. See you next time.
Amanda, quick question. Who do you think was the most influential female scholar in Chinese history?
That's a tough one. There are so many. But if I had to pick, I'd say Ban Zhao. She wasn't just a scholar. She was a historian, a teacher, and a trailblazer for women's education.
Wait, a female scholar in the Han Dynasty? That's like finding a unicorn in ancient China.
Exactly. But Ban Zhao was no mythical creature. She was very real, and her work shaped Chinese culture for centuries. Let me tell you her story.
Okay, so who was Ban Zhao? And how did she become such a powerhouse in a time when women were expected to stay at home?
Great question. Ban Zhao was born in 45 CE into the Ban family, which was already famous for its scholars. Her father, Ban Biao, and her brother, Ban Gu, were both renowned historians. So, you could say academia was in her blood.
Okay, so she had a head start?
Well, not exactly. While her family was influential, women weren't typically encouraged to pursue scholarly work. But Ban Zhao was a prodigy. She was well-versed in Confucian classics, history, and even astronomy by her teens.
Astronomy? In the Han Dynasty? That's impressive.
Right. She was basically the Hermione Granger of ancient China, brilliant, determined, and way ahead of her time.
I've heard of the Book of Han. Isn't that one of the most important historical texts in Chinese history?
Exactly. It's a massive chronicle of the Western Han Dynasty, and Ban Zhao played a huge role in completing it after her brother Ban Gu died unexpectedly.
Wait, she finished her brother's work? That's a big deal.
It is. Not only did she complete it, but she also added her own insights and revisions. Her contributions made the Book of Han one of the most comprehensive historical records of its time.
So she wasn't just a footnote in history. She was writing it.
Literally. And her work set the standard for Chinese historiography for centuries.
Okay, but what about her role in women's education? I feel like that's a big part of her legacy.
Absolutely. Ban Zhao wrote a famous text called Lessons for Women, which was basically a guide for women on how to live virtuous and educated lives.
Wait, wasn't that just about teaching women to be obedient wives and daughters?
That's a common misconception. While the text does emphasize traditional roles, it also advocates for women's education and self-improvement. She believed that educated women could contribute more to their families and society.
So she was kind of feminist before feminism was a thing?
In a way, yes. She was pushing for women's intellectual growth in a society that often overlooked their potential.
I heard she was also a teacher. Who did she teach?
She was appointed as a tutor to the empress and other women in the imperial court. Imagine being the go-to scholar for the most powerful women in the empire.
That's like being the Oprah of ancient China. Everyone wanted to learn from her.
Haha, exactly. And her teachings didn't just stay in the palace. Her ideas about education and morality spread far and wide, influencing generations of Chinese women.
How is Ban Zhao remembered today?
She's celebrated as one of China's greatest scholars and a pioneer for women's education. Her works are still studied, and she's often cited as an example of what women can achieve when given the opportunity.
So she's not just a historical figure. She's an inspiration?
Exactly. Her legacy reminds us that knowledge is power, and that power should be accessible to everyone, regardless of gender.
Why should we care about Ban Zhao today?
Her story is a reminder that education and intellectual curiosity can break barriers. In a world where women are still fighting for equal access to education, Ban Zhao's legacy is more relevant than ever.
Yeah, she's proof that women have always been capable of greatness, even when society tries to hold them back.
Exactly. And her focus on self-improvement and lifelong learning is something we can all aspire to.
So, Ban Zhao wasn't just a scholar. She was a trailblazer who redefined what women could achieve in ancient China. Her story reminds us that knowledge is the ultimate equalizer.
And let's not forget, she's proof that women have always been at the forefront of intellectual and cultural progress.
Next time, we're diving into the life of another incredible woman, Wu Zetian, China's only female emperor. Trust me, her story is just as fascinating.
A female emperor? I'm already hooked. See you next time.
Amanda, quick question. Who do you think was the most powerful woman in Chinese history?
That's a tough one. But if I had to pick, I'd say Wu Zetian. She wasn't just powerful, she was the only woman in Chinese history to rule as emperor.
Wait, an emperor? Not an empress?
Exactly. She didn't just sit on the throne as a consort or regent. She declared herself emperor and ruled in her own right. And let me tell you, her story is wild.
Okay, I'm hooked. Tell me more. So, how did Wu Zetian go from being a concubine to the most powerful person in China?
Well, it's a story of ambition, intelligence, and a lot of political maneuvering. She started as a concubine of Emperor Taizong, but after his death, she caught the eye of his son, Emperor Gaozong.
Wait, she married her stepson? That's bold.
Yes, but Wu Zetian wasn't just playing the romance card. She was incredibly intelligent and politically savvy. She quickly rose through the ranks, becoming Gaozong's empress and later his co-ruler.
Co-ruler? So she was sharing power?
At first, yes. But after Gaozong's death, she took full control, sidelining her sons and declaring herself emperor in 690 CE. It was unprecedented. No woman had ever done that before.
Okay, so what was her reign like? Was she a good ruler?
That's where it gets interesting. Wu Zetian was a controversial figure. On one hand, she was a brilliant administrator. She reformed the civil service, promoted meritocracy, and supported Buddhism, which helped unify the empire.
Sounds like she was ahead of her time.
Absolutely. But on the other hand, she was ruthless in maintaining her power. She eliminated political rivals, sometimes through brutal means, and used a network of spies to keep tabs on her enemies.
So she was like the Machiavelli of ancient China?
Pretty much. She knew how to play the game, and she played it better than anyone else.
You mentioned she supported Buddhism. Why was that such a big deal?
Great question. Wu Zetian used Buddhism to legitimize her rule. She claimed she was a reincarnation of the Maitreya Buddha, which helped her gain support from the people and the clergy.
Wait, she declared herself a Buddha? That's next-level branding.
Exactly. She also commissioned massive Buddhist projects, like the Longmen Grottos, which are still standing today. It was a way to show her devotion and solidify her legacy.
I've heard that Wu Zetian was pretty ruthless. Did she really kill her own family to stay in power?
That's one of the darker parts of her story. There are accounts that she had her daughter, sister, and even her sons killed or exiled to eliminate threats to her throne. But historians debate how much of this is true and how much is propaganda from her enemies.
Okay, for those of you who are watching this video, leave your comment below on whether Wu Zetian really killed her own family. So she's kind of like the ancient Chinese version of a Shakespearean villain?
Yes, but it's important to remember that male emperors did the same things and weren't judged as harshly. Wu Zetian was held to a different standard because she was a woman.
Beyond politics, did Wu Zetian leave any cultural or societal impacts?
Absolutely. She was a huge patron of the arts and literature. During her reign, she encouraged the creation of poetry, music, and art, which flourished under her rule. She also promoted education, especially for women, and even established schools for them.
Wait, schools for women in the 7th century? That's groundbreaking.
She believed that educated women could contribute more to society, and she practiced what she preached. She was known to be highly educated herself, and even wrote poetry and essays.
So she wasn't just a ruler. She was a cultural icon too?
Yeah. Her reign is often seen as a golden age for Tang dynasty culture, and her influence extended far beyond politics.
I've heard she had a secret police force. Is that true?
Yes. Wu Zetian created a network of spies and informants known as the Copper Fish. They were tasked with rooting out dissent and ensuring loyalty to her rule.
That sounds intense. Did it work?
It did, but it also made her deeply feared. The Copper Fish were notorious for their harsh methods, and many officials lived in constant fear of being accused of treason.
So she ruled with an iron fist?
In many ways, yes. But it's also worth noting that her reign was remarkably stable, which was rare for the time. Her methods, while controversial, kept the empire together during a turbulent period.
So, Wu Zetian wasn't just an empress. She was a trailblazer who redefined what women could achieve in ancient China. Her story reminds us that power knows no gender.
And let's not forget, she's proof that women have always been at the forefront of political and cultural change.
Next time, we're diving into the life of another incredible woman, Empress Dowager Cixi, the last powerful ruler of imperial China. Trust me, her story is just as fascinating.
A woman who ruled behind the scenes. I'm already hooked. See you next time.
Amanda, I've got a trivia question for you. Who was the last person to rule imperial China before it became a republic?
Oh, that's an easy one. It was Empress Dowager Cixi. But here's the twist. She wasn't technically the emperor. She was the power behind the throne for nearly 50 years.
Wait, so she was like the ultimate puppet master, pulling all the strings without anyone realizing it?
Exactly. She was the queen of political chess, always 10 moves ahead of everyone else. And trust me, her story is full of twists, turns, and a whole lot of drama.
All right, you got me hooked. Let's dive into the life of the woman who ruled an empire from the shadows. So, how did Cixi go from being a concubine to the most powerful person in China? That's quite the leap.
It all started when she became a concubine of Emperor Xianfeng. She gave birth to his only son, Tongji, which instantly made her one of the most important women in the palace.
Okay, but how did she go from important to running the show?
When Xianfeng died, Tongji became emperor, but he was only 5 years old. So, Cixi became his regent, effectively ruling in his name. And when Tongji died young, she did it again with her nephew, Guangxiu.
So she was like, oh, you need a ruler? Don't worry, I've got this.
Pretty much. She was a master of political maneuvering. She knew how to play factions against each other and always came out on top.
What was her reign like? Was she a good ruler? Or was it all about maintaining her power?
It's complicated. On one hand, she kept the empire together during a time of massive internal and external pressures. On the other hand, she was incredibly conservative and resistant to reform, which many blame for China's decline.
So she was like a double-edged sword, keeping things stable but also holding China back?
Exactly. For example, when Emperor Guangxi tried to modernize China with the 100 Days Reform, Cixi shut it down and placed him under house arrest.
Wait, she put the emperor under house arrest? That's bold.
Oh, that's just the tip of the iceberg. She was ruthless when it came to protecting her power.
What about her relationship with foreign powers? I've heard that was a big issue during her reign.
Oh, absolutely. Cixi's reign coincided with the height of Western imperialism in China. She had to deal with everything from the Opium Wars to the Boxer Rebellion.
The Boxer Rebellion? That sounds intense. What happened?
The Boxers were a nationalist movement that opposed foreign influence in China. At first, Cixi supported them, but when the rebellion failed, she had to flee Beijing as foreign troops occupied the city.
Yikes. So she was caught between a rock and a hard place?
Exactly. Her inability to effectively handle foreign pressure is one of the reasons her reign is often criticized.
Okay, let's lighten things up a bit. What was Cixi like as a person? Did she have any hobbies or interests?
Oh, she was quite the character. She loved art, theater, and luxury. She had a passion for Peking opera and even performed in plays herself.
Wait, she performed in plays? That's unexpected.
Yes, she was a patron of the arts and even commissioned a famous portrait of herself as the Buddhist goddess Guanyin.
So she was a mix of politician, artist, and diva?
Pretty much. But her extravagant spending also drew criticism, especially during a time when many Chinese people were struggling.
I've heard that Cixi is one of the most controversial figures in Chinese history. Why is that?
Well, her critics argue that her conservative policies and resistance to reform contributed to China's decline and eventual collapse. They also point to her ruthless tactics, like the execution of political rivals and the suppression of reform movements.
So she's seen as both a savior and a villain?
Exactly. Her supporters say she kept the empire together during a turbulent time, but her critics argue that her actions ultimately weakened China.
So, Empress Dowager Cixi wasn't just a ruler. She was a complex figure who shaped the final decades of imperial China. Her story is a reminder that power is never black and white. It's messy, complicated, and often controversial.
And let's not forget, she's proof that women have always been at the forefront of political and cultural change, even in the most challenging circumstances.
Next time, we're diving into the life of another incredible woman, Mulan, the legendary warrior who inspired countless stories and films. But was she real? And what's the truth behind the legend? Trust me, you don't want to miss it.
A legendary warrior? I'm already hooked. See you next time.
Imagine this. A young woman cuts her hair, straps on armor, and goes to war in her father's place for 12 years without anyone realizing she's a woman.
Okay, pause. Either ancient Chinese armies had terrible HR departments, or there's more to the story.
This is the legend of Huang Mulan. But what's fact, what's fiction? And why does her story still captivate us 1,500 years later?
Our earliest source is the Ballad of Mulan from the Northern Wei dynasty, just 300 cryptic lines about a girl who went to war.
That's it? No talking dragons? No matchmaking disasters?
Nope. The original is shockingly simple. Army conscripts her elderly father. She volunteers instead, serves 12 years undiscovered, refuses high rank to go home. That's it.
Wait, the ballad doesn't even specify which war she fought in?
Bingo. Scholars debate if it was against the Rural nomads or maybe it's symbolic of broader tensions between agricultural China and steppe tribes.
Let's get practical. How could a woman hide in the army for over a decade?
Northern Wei armies had key advantages. Soldiers often came from same villages, armor concealed body shape, minimal bathing facilities, and mixed-gender nomadic traditions in some regiments.
But what about, bodily functions?
The Song Dynasty version actually addresses this. Mulan supposedly dug latrine trenches at night to maintain privacy. Medieval problem-solving at its finest. Over centuries, the story got upgrades. Tang Dynasty added her post-war marriage. Ming Dynasty gave her a tragic suicide to preserve chastity. And Qing Dynasty turned her into a martial arts master.
Whoa, suicide. That's darker than Disney let on.
The 17th century Sui Tang romance claims when her gender was discovered, the emperor wanted her as a concubine. She killed herself to remain faithful to her ideals.
From folktale to feminist icon, how did this story go global?
3 game-changing moments. 1593, first stage adaptation during Ming Dynasty. 1920s, Chinese feminists reclaimed her as a symbol. And 1998, Disney's billion-dollar makeover.
Wait, Mulan was used in wartime propaganda?
Absolutely. Both nationalists and communists used her during World War II to recruit women. The message is, if Mulan could fight invaders 1,500 years ago, so can you.
Not everyone loves the Disney version, though.
Yeah, the major critiques include The matchmaking plot, which is not an original. Mushi replacing ancestral worship themes. And lastly, 2020 film's connection to Xinjiang filming locations.
So is there a right way to tell Mulan's story?
Her power is adaptability. She's been a filial daughter, feminist rebel, and propaganda tool. Maybe the real Mulan is the meanings we've given her along the way.
If she's this cultural chameleon, how much of the original Mulan is still in there?
Let's peel back the layers. The earliest version, the Northern Wei Ballad of Mulan, is shockingly sparse. Just 300 characters. No love interests, no ancestors' ghosts.
No talking dragon sidekicks? I feel lied to.
Not even a mention of matchmaking. But here's the genius. The ballad never uses he or she. Listen to the big reveal. 12 years together, they didn't know Mulan was a woman. The language itself helped her hide.
So if this were written in English,
she'd have been busted by the first, yes ma'am. That linguistic loophole let every era remake her. Ming Dynasty playwrights gave her a tragic suicide. 1940s propaganda posters turned her into a war recruiter. Disney gave her, well, musical numbers.
And a dragon.
But through all the reinventions, that core question remains. How did a woman disappear into a man's world? And why do we keep retelling it?
So whether fact, fiction, or something in between, Mulan represents the timeless tension between individual courage and social expectations.
And next time, we're meeting her nautical counterpart, the pirate queen Ching Shih, who commanded 1,800 ships and outsmarted empires.
After learning how much we've misunderstood Mulan, I can't wait to see what we've gotten wrong about pirates.
And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button. We got so many more stories of histories, hidden badasses coming your way.
Imagine a world where pirates ruled the seas, feared by entire empires. Not just any pirates, but a confederation of over 70,000 men and women, hundreds of ships strong, controlling trade routes and standing against mighty naval forces. And at the helm of this formidable fleet was not a ruthless warlord or a battle-hardened admiral, but a woman, Ching Shih.
A woman who rose from the shadows of a Cantonese brothel to become the most powerful pirate in history. Her name might not be as well known in the West as Blackbeard, but let me tell you, even the mightiest empires feared her. This is not a legend, not a myth, this is history, as unbelievable as it may seem.
And today, we're going to tell you her story. A story of ambition, power, strategy, and survival. Get ready, because this is one of the most astonishing tales in the history of piracy. So, let's start at the beginning. Ching Shih, also known as Zheng Yi Saw, which means wife of Zheng Yi, was born around 1775 in Guangdong, China. Her original name is lost to history, but we do know where she first appeared, working in a brothel in Canton. Now, before you jump to conclusions, let's talk about what that actually meant in 18th century China.
Exactly. These weren't just places of entertainment. Many high-class brothels were hubs of political intrigue, where merchants, officials, and even foreign dignitaries let their guard down. Ching, she wasn't just a courtesan, she was a keen observer, a listener, someone who gathered information like a strategist planning her next move. And this skill would prove invaluable later.
Then, in 1801, she caught the eye of Zheng Yi, a rising pirate commander. But here's where it gets interesting. He didn't just want her as a wife. He wanted her as a partner.
And Ching, she made sure of it. Some sources suggest that she negotiated her own terms before marrying him. She wouldn't just be his wife. She would have a say in running the fleet. And together, they transformed the Red Flag fleet into an empire of the seas.
For 6 years, Ching Shih and Zheng Yi built their power, absorbing smaller pirate bands, intimidating merchants, and controlling the South China Sea. At its peak, their fleet commanded over 1,800 ships. That's more than some national navies of the time. But then, in 1807, Zheng Yi died unexpectedly. And now, you'd expect the fleet to crumble. After all, how could a woman hold command over thousands of ruthless pirates?
But Ching, she wasn't just any woman. She didn't just survive, she took control. She secured the loyalty of Zheng Yi's closest allies, including Zhang Baozai, a trusted lieutenant, and she ensured the fleet didn't fall into chaos.
And how did she do it? By proving she was smarter, stricter, and more ruthless than anyone else.
Ching Shih knew that discipline was key to maintaining power. She implemented a strict pirate code: break the rules, and you paid with your life.
Let's go over a few of these rules. First, absolute obedience to orders. Any defiance? Death.
Second, all loot had to be registered and distributed fairly. No hoarding, no stealing. Thieves were executed.
And here's a surprising one. Female captives were not to be mistreated. Any pirate caught harming a woman would be executed. If a pirate took a wife, he had to be loyal to her.
This was a game changer. It wasn't just about brute force. It was about discipline, organization, and control.
The Qing dynasty wasn't happy about a pirate fleet ruling the South China Sea. So in 1808, they launched a massive crackdown. But they underestimated Ching Shih.
She had mastered naval warfare. She used false retreats to lure enemy ships into traps. She had her pirates trained in specialized boarding tactics. Time and time again, the Qing Navy suffered humiliating defeats. Even when the Chinese government sought help from the British and Portuguese, they couldn't stop her.
At this point, she wasn't just a pirate. She was an untouchable naval power. The government had one last option: negotiate.
Now, here's the part that blows my mind. In 1810, Ching Shih didn't surrender in defeat. She walked into negotiations and dictated her own terms.
And what did she demand? Full amnesty for herself and her entire fleet. Not just pardons, but official military and government positions for her men. And you know what? The Qing dynasty agreed.
She retired, filthy rich, and lived out the rest of her life in peace. Think about that. How many pirates in history retire undefeated, keeping their wealth, and even gaining government recognition?
Ching Shih's story is one of intelligence, power, and defiance. She wasn't just a pirate queen. She was a strategist, a commander, and a ruler in her own right.
And in a time when women had almost no power in leadership, she commanded thousands. That alone makes her one of the most extraordinary figures in history.
What do you think? Was Ching Shih the greatest pirate of all time? Let us know in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this deep dive into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell.
Thanks for joining us. Stay tuned for more incredible stories of the women who shaped China's past.
Imagine a woman so brilliant, so politically astute, that even the most powerful empress in Chinese history entrusted her with the empire. A woman who rose from a family tragedy to become the closest thing China ever had to a female prime minister. Her name? Shangguan Wan'er.
Her story is unlike any other. She was born into disgrace, survived court intrigue, and wielded power over emperors and generals, all in a time when women were rarely allowed near politics. Today, we uncover the incredible journey of China's most influential female politician.
Our story begins in 664 CE, during the Tang Dynasty, one of China's golden ages. But for Shangguan Wan'er, life didn't begin in luxury. She was born into a family of scholars, but fate dealt her a cruel hand.
Her grandfather, Shangguan Yi, was a high-ranking minister. He opposed Empress Wu Zetian's rise to power, believing a woman should never rule. But Wu Zetian was not a woman to be challenged. She had Shangguan Yi executed and wiped out the entire family, except for one, a newborn girl.
That girl was Shangguan Wan'er. Instead of killing her, Wu Zetian enslaved her and her mother, forcing them to serve in the palace. She was born into nobility, yet raised as a servant. But this would not be her fate forever.
ShangguanWan'er was exceptional. Despite her low status, her mother ensured she received a scholar's education. By the time she was a teenager, she was already a literary genius, mastering poetry, classical texts, and governance.
When Wu Zetian heard of a young servant girl with an unmatched talent for writing, she was intrigued. At just 14 years old, Shangguan Wan'er was summoned before the empress and given an impossible test. Write a flawless essay, instantly.
What happened next was extraordinary. Shangguan Wan'er composed a piece so elegant, So well argued that Wu Zetian immediately freed her from servitude and made her her personal secretary.
Imagine that, a girl born into disgrace, now whispering in the ears of emperors.
Wu Zetian saw something in Shangguan Wan'er that others overlooked, a mind as sharp as any man's. She drafted imperial edicts, shaping national policies. She wrote political speeches that Wu Zetian delivered as her own. She managed secret affairs of state, deciding which officials would rise and fall.
By her early 20s, Shangguan Wan'er was more than just an assistant. She was Wu Zetian's most trusted advisor. Even generals and ministers feared her influence.
She wasn't just a political mind. She was also a renowned poet. Her verses were celebrated in the imperial court, blending grace with power. She became the heart of Tang Dynasty's literary scene, influencing poetry for generations.
But power is dangerous, especially in a court filled with scheming officials. When Wu Zetian's rule began to weaken, enemies closed in. After Wu Zetian's death in 705 CE, her son, Emperor Zhongzong, took the throne.
Shangguan Wan'er was too valuable to cast aside. The new emperor kept her as his chief advisor, and soon, she controlled imperial politics once again.
But the palace was a battlefield. Emperor Zhongzong's wife, Empress Wei, was ambitious, perhaps too ambitious. She saw Shangguan Wan'er as both an ally and a rival. They worked together at first, but soon, their relationship turned into a power struggle.
In 710 CE, Emperor Zhongzong mysteriously died. Many suspected poison. With him gone, Empress Wei seized power and saw Shangguan Wan'er as a threat.
One night, soldiers stormed into her chamber. Shangguan Wan'er, the woman who had advised empires, shaped policies, and ruled from the shadows, was dragged out and executed.
She was just 46 years old. Her enemies thought they had erased her, but history remembers her differently.
Shangguan Wan'er's legacy is astonishing. She was the closest China ever had to a female prime minister. She was one of the most influential poets of her time, and she also was a political strategist who shaped the Tang dynasty.
Her influence lasted far beyond her death. The policies she helped create strengthened the Tang dynasty. The literary culture she nurtured flourished for centuries. And her story of a woman rising from disgrace to power became an inspiration for generations.
What do you think? Was Shangguan Wan'er the true power behind the Tang dynasty? Let us know in the comments. If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more incredible stories.
Thank you for joining us on this journey through time. Stay tuned for more untold stories of the women who shaped China's past.
In a world where women were expected to be silent, one woman defied all expectations. Lu Ji, the first woman to ever rule China. She crushed rivals, controlled emperors, and shaped the Han dynasty with an iron will.
Some call her a brilliant strategist. Others see her as a ruthless tyrant. But one thing is certain, without Lu Ji, Chinese history would have been very different.
Some even argue that she was just as influential, if not more so, than Wu Zetian. After all, she came first.
That's a bold claim. But let's not get ahead of ourselves. First, let's go back to where it all began.
Lu Ji was born around 241 BCE, into a world torn by war. But her fate changed when she married Liu Bang, a man who would overthrow the mighty Qin dynasty and found the Han dynasty.
Unlike most women of her time, Lu Ji was educated and politically sharp. While Liu Bang fought on the battlefield, she managed affairs behind the scenes.
And when Liu Bang became emperor in 202 BCE, she became Empress Liu, the most powerful woman in the empire.
Lu Ji didn't just rule, she secured her power. One of her first major acts, the elimination of Han Xin, one of the greatest military commanders of the time.
Han Xin was loyal to Liu Bang, but after his death, Lu Ji saw him as a threat. She tricked him into the palace and had him executed on the spot.
She understood politics better than most, and she knew that leaving a rival alive was dangerous.
In 195 BCE, Liu Bang died, leaving the empire to their son, Liu Ying. But the real ruler? Lu Ji,
This was unprecedented. A woman ruling an empire in a time when women had no official power? She made it happen.
She controlled the imperial court, dictated policies, and held absolute authority. Some say she paved the way for Wu Zetian centuries later.
That's possible. But unlike Wu Zetian, who declared herself emperor, Liu Ji had to operate from behind the scenes.
Of all Liu Ji's actions, none were more infamous than what she did to Lady Qi.
Lady Qi was Liu Bang's favorite concubine. He even wanted to make her son the next emperor instead of Liu Ji's.
After Liu Bang's death, Liu Ji took her revenge. She had Lady Qi's arms and legs cut off, blinded her, and locked her in a pigsty, calling her the human swine.
It was brutal, even by ancient standards. Some argue that Wu Zetian, for all her ruthlessness, never went that far.
For 15 years, Liu Ji ruled with absolute power, placing her own family members in key positions.
But after her death, in 180 BCE, the Han nobility struck back. Her entire clan was wiped out in a violent purge.
Unlike Wu Zetian, whose dynasty survived after her, Liu Ji's rule ended in bloodshed. So, let's ask the question, was Liu Ji as influential as Wu Zetian?
Liu Ji was the first. Without her, a female ruler in China might never have seemed possible.
But Wu Zetian ruled in her own name and reshaped China's government for generations.
That's true, but Liu Ji was operating in a far stricter patriarchal world. Her ability to seize power despite those restrictions is what makes her remarkable.
Fair point. But what do you think? Was Liu Ji China's true first female ruler? Or was Wu Zetian ultimately more influential? Let us know in the comments. If you love stories of powerful women in history, subscribe, and hit the bell icon for more.
Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more stories of the women who shaped China's past.
As we reach the end of our journey through history, we reflect on the powerful women who shaped China. From warriors and scholars to emperors and strategists, each of these women left an indelible mark on the course of history. Their stories were not always written in the grand halls of power, but their legacies echo through the centuries, reminding us of the strength, intelligence, and determination that women have always possessed, even in the face of immense challenges.
What's striking is that, despite the confines of their time, these women did not just play supporting roles in the stories of their nations, they became architects of their own destinies. They forged paths for future generations, breaking boundaries and rewriting the rules of what it meant to lead.
And though their names might not always be spoken on the lips of every historian or celebrated in popular culture, these women lived lives of unparalleled resilience and vision. They did not only change their world, they reshaped what we understand about power, wisdom, and influence.
As we close today, remember that history is not just a series of events. It is the sum of the stories of all those who lived, struggled, and triumphed. And in the stories of these women, we find lessons of courage, sacrifice, and the relentless pursuit of a better future. They remind us that change often begins in the most unexpected places, driven by those who dare to dream beyond the limits of their time.
What do you think? Which of these women left the most lasting legacy in your eyes? Let us know in the comments below. We'd love to hear your thoughts.
Thank you for watching. As we continue to explore history, let's remember these 10 remarkable women whose stories have transcended time, whose courage has not been forgotten, and whose influence still resonates today.
If you enjoyed this deep dive into history, don't forget to subscribe, and hit the notification bell for more incredible stories. We'll be back soon with more untold tales from the past.
Stay curious and never stop learning. Until next time,